Welcome to another episode of the Boss Experience podcast. My name is Michele Davis, and I'm your host. And I'm here with Rania Hotate, and we are here for another episode of helping you start your business. And often in business, just like with anything else, we need support. We need support from our family members. We need support, financially. We need support maybe even from your kids. But also a big part of our support network includes our partner. And our partner can be our spouse, our boyfriend, our girlfriend, whomever is in our lives. We need support from that person as well. And even though we need that support may not exist from the people in our lives. And so that's what Rania and I are going to be discussing today. And we're going to take it from three different directions. We're going to look at the impact in terms of how a lack of support from your partner actually hinders you from succeeding and starting your business. We're going to look at the mindset shifts that need to happen for you to get to the point where you can have the self-esteem and the self-confidence to implement your business and get started. And then finally, we're also going to look at some action steps you can take to get your life refocused, to reshift direction, and to be successful in business. And so you may be asking, well, how does Rania actually fit into being able to share this information in terms of business success? Well, Rania is an internationally known speaker. She's a serial entrepreneur. She's been featured in Forbes magazine, Huffington Post, Entrepreneur magazine, Inc. magazine, among other media outlets. And her company her current company, and which she's the founder and CEO of, is ID4A Technologies. And this is a renowned manufacturing company. And so Rania has, she's had this company for the last 11 years. And she, in addition to this company, she has, created other companies in the past. She's had exit strategies where she sold those businesses, and she is now about to make another move, possibly. So I'll let her get into the details about that, and I'll let Rania take it from here and introduce herself first, and then we'll get into just why she may be the perfect expert for this topic.
So, hi, Michele.
Hi.
My name is Rania Hotate. Again, thank you so much for having me on the Boss Experience. And thank you for the beautiful and brief introduction as well to give our listeners a bit of an overview about who I am. And hopefully by the end of this conversation, they'll have much more insights about my personality, how I think, my philosophies in life. And I'm also hoping that the insights we share today will be transformational to our audience as well.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. So why don't we start off by talking about, first of all, did I miss anything in your introduction? Because, you've been featured, quite a bit for just your innovations in manufacturing and, just, internationally. So I just want to make sure I introduced everything and all of your wonderful accomplishments. And then, then I want to ask, and the same thing the audience may be wondering, what qualifies you to even begin to talk about, relationships and not being supported? Because after all, being such a successful entrepreneur, weren't you always supported? People may be thinking you never had to deal with what I had to deal with. People may have that in their minds because they may think they're the only ones that are dealing with a particular situation.
Yeah, 100%. People always think that they are in an isolated bubble within their own experience until they share their story and realize that it relates with hundreds, if not thousands or millions of other people. And especially when you are an entrepreneur, there is a lot of common themes and common experiences that entrepreneurs have. And people have a huge misconception around success, around how people create success, about how people carve their path. And to be qualified, honestly, I speak for myself, from my own experience, because I am a person who started from scratch. I left my home country of Lebanon at the age of 18. I only had $1,000 in my pocket when I left home. At the time, my parents were getting divorced, so my family was falling apart. I came alone to the United States with only that $1,000, and I was supposed to be coming here and going to college and figuring things out on my own, because at that point, my family was not able to support me with any more financial resources beyond what they gave me to leave the country with.
Wow.
So I found myself landing in a completely new territory, a new culture, by myself. I had some family members in the area that I landed in, but there wasn't a very strong connection to the culture, and I still didn't know how I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do with only $1,000, and I was not going to ask anyone for money. So that was really the initial point of the initial starting point, where I came in with so little and I had such big dreams. I didn't come to a new country, left my home because I wanted to work a small job and stay a small person. I had big dreams, and I was hoping that leaving the environment I was in, which was extremely toxic, and the potential for growth was very limited due to the economic circumstances of the country, due to the war situation, due to so many other factors that were limiting to what I wanted to ultimately achieve. So my hope was I can make it happen, but with so little, it's very hard to think it's possible, right? But then you start to look at your dreams and look at where you are, and then you soon start to follow that drive. And the drive that tells you it's possible, you can make it happen, you're resourceful, you can work, you can make money, you can start to find new opportunities to expand on your capacity, on your abilities, on your skills, and take your education and learning experiences and also the struggles that you're going through. Like for me, I was a very young girl, immigrant with no resources, and I had big dreams. That was really the combination that I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
And I was willing to do everything I can. I was working so many jobs while going to school full time. And I didn't stop. There was days where I wouldn't sleep for 3 days in a row. And that was the norm of how I was living for a long time. There was nothing easy about it. And I moved states. I went to different colleges that people dream to go to, because I took my work and I'm like, I can do this. I can make it happen. I can find ways to get loans, to get scholarships, to find ways to fund my own education. And that's exactly what I did. So I never had to ask anyone to support me, because I never had that support system. So I learned to be very self-sufficient in so many ways. And that was really the beginning of my life. And then when I went into entrepreneurship, I was still in college. I was only in second year in college when I wanted to become an entrepreneur, because I thought, I'm not going to achieve my dreams having these small jobs. That's not going to happen. I need to find a way to really put all my talents in a package and start to bring those ideas that I have to the table to build businesses and to build companies and to build something bigger than myself, so I can really expand on all the capabilities that I have and reach my own potential as an individual and as a creative entrepreneur. And that's what I started to do. I just started literally to do it. And as soon as you put yourself in the position of taking actions, you find yourself taking the next step and the next step and moving, even if it's slowly, you inevitably start to move forward, because all what it takes to get from A to B is for you to start walking the path. And so, so you tell me about not being supported. I literally did not have any support. Even when I was starting my companies, the judgment that I was facing, the discrimination I was facing, the sexism, all the different levels of struggles that you can think of when you are presenting yourself as a young female entrepreneur in the business world and trying to do any fundraising, or you're trying to even present your ideas to potential investors or to potential clients. There is a huge barrier there when it comes to how people perceive women, how people perceive young women, how people perceive immigrants, how people perceive you from being from a certain country or from a certain race, how people perceive you if you were someone who is a bit more attractive, or you don't look like a certain stereotype of what people in certain businesses look like. So there's so many layers of discrimination that you have to deal with, and none of it is supportive by any means, right? So yeah, exactly. So what happens is that you have to choose: do I need the validation from someone else, or do I choose me, and I choose my self-belief and my own vision for myself and what I want to achieve, and follow that and let that be the main driver for my own activities and my own initiatives per se. So and then from there, you as an individual, you inevitably also have, beyond your support system and business or your friends, you also have your personal relationships with potential partners or spouses or anything like that. And through those types of experiences also, you have completely different challenges that you have to deal with. And to be honest, from my personal experience, and I've heard that from so many ambitious and successful women as well, that they were rarely in a position where their spouses or their partners were fully supportive. And in certain cases, as you grow in the relationship, and if your partner is not leveling up in the same way you are, creates a whole other layer of jealousy and envy and competition, and a whole other level of toxicity that you are now facing on the inside, and nobody knows about that on the outside. It's your personal experience, and then you have to show up in the world as brave as you can possibly be, as confident as you can possibly be, and to perform at your best while you're having so many struggles at home or with your family or with your friends, that people don't understand how those negative interactions and relational dynamics can actually impact you, and what it takes from you to be much stronger than that, to overcome all that. So a lot of the struggles are also internal and invisible and are not things that everyone can see. So there are so many layers to this, but I'm sure what I'm saying, a lot of people will relate to in different ways.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about, like, of course, not being supported and having to show up anyway. And this is all in addition to the everyday struggles you may be going through as a mom, everyday struggles you may be going through. Maybe people are still working 9 to 5s and they're getting stressed out there, and they're already have limited hours for their business. And, to not have a supportive partner is certainly a burden. So in terms of being able to hinder you, in terms of hindering you from, moving past that point, like, what are a few examples of what that may look like to people? Because we know that self-care is important, and it's kind of hard to do self-care when you're in crisis, so to speak. And then let's talk about, like, kind of the mindset shifts that need to happen to get someone from that place of feeling stuck and feeling unsupported and feeling burdened, with this with everything that's going on and not being able to get their business started or growing or make money from their business, to those mindset shifts. Does that make sense?
Yes, sure. So
Absolutely.
let me talk about the starting the business point, and then we can talk about the relationship dynamics that could be an interference. First of all, starting a business as a concept is not for the faint of heart, and that's something I always tell my mentees and people that I advise and other entrepreneurs and people that I speak to. There's one thing where you want to start a business and to actually have what it takes to do it. And it's not impossible, but simply because entrepreneurship is literally the riskiest and most challenging journey any person can take. It can also be the most fulfilling experience if you are someone who is ambitious, who is driven, who has a vision, and you are willing to move through obstacles, and you have the resilience to bounce back from difficulties. It could be absolutely the most beautiful experience because there's so much you can learn, so much you can acquire, and so much opportunity for you to give other people on the way of you also giving to yourself. One of the main things that I always advise aspiring entrepreneurs and leaders who want to go into the business world is the first thing they need to do is to be introspective with themselves. Mm-hmm. And that means to really take the time to answer critical questions that can help them to identify their strengths, their weaknesses, the viability of the business idea that they have. So really make a very realistic assessment of themselves and their capabilities and where they are at emotionally and mentally, and also when it comes to finances, how they can manage that initial phase where you need to invest. Mm-hmm. So assessing the ideas that they're trying to invest in from a business point of view. So that would be really number one. The main thing is making realistic assessments of self and of your business idea. The second most important thing is to really understand the importance of creating priorities as you move forward. And part of those priorities is also if you are in a bad relationship or in a toxic situation, how do you prioritize? If you want to achieve certain goals, how do you start to set priorities around limiting situations like that? And we'll touch on this in a bit more. But time management, setting priorities becomes the second most important thing after you make self-assessment and realistic assessment of your business idea, as you start to setting priorities and having a plan on how you're going to move through those ideas. Most people don't have necessarily the best ability to think about time when they are organizing themselves early on and the initial phases of starting a business. So I always say, put 25% to planning and 75% to doing. Mm-hmm. That's how your time should be divided. If you feel that you're spending more time thinking about something than actually doing it, you are wasting so much time, and that's not going to help you move forward with your business plan. The third advice around starting a business is also to really round out your skills. A lot of people go into business having a passion to start a business or having an idea that they're passionate about, but that alone doesn't make you a good business person. So the realistic self-assessment can help you understand where you have skill gaps and where you have competency issues that you can start to work on and build upon in order to become much more equipped on this journey of entrepreneurship and leadership and business management. The last thing I want to mention, which is critical because a lot of people don't put so much emphasis on this until later, is that business is heavily dependent on your ability to build relationships and to instill trust and to inspire cooperation with others. And that's how you bring clients on board. That's how you bring partners on board, investors. That's how you bring employees on board. That's how you get everyone to rally around you. If you like, for me, I have so many social impact initiatives, and within that realm, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to bring people around certain ideas and make sure you highlight the importance of getting certain things done. And you have to be able to inspire and motivate and build the trust in order for people to want to be on your team and to want to help you move your ideas forward and execute on the plans that you have. And lastly, leadership is a main competence when you're starting a business. And a lot of people confuse the capabilities of management with leadership abilities. And those are two different things. So if someone doesn't have good leadership skills, they need to really focus on developing these skills and knowing how to be a great leader as much as they are trying to be a very good strategic manager and an effective practitioner in business. So those are really the main things I advise anyone who wants to start a business to be thinking about and to be really fully aware of. When it comes to relationships and having a support system, I think, people underestimate the negative impact of toxic relationships on their ability to thrive and succeed. And simply because people think, no, I'm independent enough, I'm strong enough, I can do that. But once you are in the same space with someone and you are energetically tied up with them, and you're having this exchange back and forth of energy with someone, there is a limit to how much positive energy you can produce when you are being met with so much negativity, correct?
Correct. And not to mention it's a distraction from your goals.
Yes.
And you can't have the mindset that you are going to change this person. What you see is what you get. You're not a therapist. And you don't have the ability to change anyone else and make them into something you want them to be.
100% agree. And a lot of people don't realize that right away, because you will go into a relationship with someone, you have the best intentions, and you'd hope that the other person also has the best intentions for you, but sometimes things don't turn out this way. And you start to learn more about the person you are with, and you start to discover more about them, and they're discovering more about you as well. But I've noticed that when relationships turn toxic, and I'll speak from my experience personally, the main gap, when you are someone who is thriving in your life and you are evolving much faster or at a whole other level than your partner, or your partner doesn't have the same competencies or the same vision, or they are incapable of moving through life at the same speed or with the same ambition and drive, it becomes a huge clash of energies. And with that comes a lot of other layers where someone is constantly trying to pull you back or to stop you or bring you down, because they don't like the fact that you are doing better than they are. They don't like you for being so successful and independent. And what they liked about you in the beginning can start to become a threat to their own self-confidence and their own sense of self-worth. And they start to respond in different ways to your dreams and to your vision and to your achievements. And last thing you want as someone who is trying to move forward is for someone to be literally pulling you back or holding you down. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and it can be confusing, because you're thinking, well, this person really, really cares about me. Why aren't they supporting me?
Right. And those are the nuances that you don't really understand, because especially for at least most people that I know who are similar to myself and our audience who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs and building businesses, those people have, generally speaking, if they are healthy individuals, they have so much positive energy. And they're literally walking around spreading so much positivity around them because they know the value of motivating and supporting other people. And they know the value of cooperation more than conflict and competition. So if you are someone like that and you are met with someone who is seeing you as a competition, or they are not at ease with the idea that you are such a, such a driven person who has all this energy to do all these things, and you are succeeding at it and you are doing great, and they see themselves that they are not capable of matching you at that level, they could be extremely destructive to your self-confidence, to your as a distraction, like you mentioned, because now you're stuck in a dynamic of competition and conflict that is fear-based, and that is lack of self-worth based, and based on insecurities, and you think, like you mentioned, you think that this person, I thought you were my partner and you will be there for me. And then you start to realize you're actually dealing with someone that you can sometimes easily label as an enemy, because they're working against you and they're not being supportive to you, despite of you maybe doing the opposite and being absolutely supportive and doing everything you can to make things move forward. But at some point, you have to choose you. And there is nothing wrong with that. And I think this is something that a lot of people need to hear, because all of us have been in a place where you think, if I do more and I give more and I'm more patient and I compromise here and I keep giving there, things will be better. Why? Because I'm optimistic and I see things that could be better and could change. And back to what you said as well, sometimes you have to give up on the idea that your positive energy and your support and your love and your attention will be able to transform someone else to the better, if they're not willing to change themselves. And you have to be very smart about your long-term vision. You have to be very smart about how you want to move through life. You have to be very smart about how you utilize your energy and how you invest it. Especially as we grow older and we move forward in our lives, time becomes extremely valuable, and your energy becomes extremely valuable. And those are literally your biggest assets. If you waste them or if you invest them in the wrong way, it's not the same as when you were 15 or 20 years old and you're reckless about how much time and effort and energy you give to the wrong people. So those are the things that I wish people pay attention more to, and understand that at some point you have to let go of the expectation that you giving more, you doing more, you compromising more will give you the reciprocity that you are hoping for, or will give you the result of a changed person that will be ultimately more supportive to you. But I know you also wanted to talk about other cases where you're not necessarily dealing with toxic people or people with certain personality disorders or anything like that. When you're
Correct.
dealing with normal people who just need a little bit more from you in terms of communication, right? To see how they can be more supportive to you. You wanted to talk about that, right?
Absolutely. Before we get into action steps, because definitely if you're in a toxic relationship, neither Rania or myself support staying in that relationship. Anything that is, abusive emotionally, physically, financially, or anything that's just not empowering to your spirit, are considered toxic relationships. So there's instances where you definitely need to have an action plan, and Rania's gonna have some ideas about that in a moment. But there are those kind of situations where maybe your partner wants to be supportive, but they really don't know how, and they're there to be there for you. They just need direction and guidance. So how do you know the difference? But how do you know you have that person that actually wants to be there, and it's just a matter of the two of you working together in terms of your communication, maybe you communicating what your needs are and maybe sharing what you're doing. What would you add to that in terms of like, how do you know when you have that partner that is not toxic, but this is just like a communication issue?
100%. Well, toxic behaviors are obvious. We call them red flags, and sometimes we ignore them. But toxic people have particular behavioral patterns that you see them apply to you, and you see them also apply on the people around them. So, if your partner is displaying traits such as controlling behavior or abusive behavior, or verbally or emotionally or mentally abusive behaviors, you should be very literate about these terms and literate about these different tactics that abusers use, so you understand that I'm just not feeling bad or this person is upset. No, they are being abusive, and those are the tactics that they are using in order to break me down, whether that's emotionally or verbally, and sometimes physically, right? So I encourage people to get more educated on those psychological topics and understand more about what abuse means and what does it look like in terms of behaviors, so they could detect that in their partners and understand what's the difference between normal behaviors and responses that are between a certain range of negative to positive, but they're not necessarily extremely toxic or abusive. Those are normal reactions versus extreme behaviors that are coming from a toxic person or someone who has a personality disorder of some sort, or they have mental health problems that you're not necessarily aware of. So get educated. That's really important. And I've been there before where I did not know what I'm dealing with. Like, what is this? And it takes you just coming out of the relationship and giving yourself the time to get educated on the person's behavior, that you understand, oh, I've been dealing with someone with narcissistic personality disorder. I've been dealing with someone who has 1 and 2, 3 issues. And now you understand the cycle of abuse you've been faced with, and that no one else can relate to unless they've been in such a situation before. But when you have a healthy partner, they normally display healthy behaviors. They don't necessarily bring you down. I don't criticize you. I might not show enough interest in what you're doing because I don't necessarily understand it. But I don't tell you, hey, honey, you're bad at doing this. You shouldn't be doing that, right? That this is like starting to get a little bit more on the toxic end of communication or behavior, or someone you're trying to share your ideas with, and they're telling you, I've got something to do, and ignore what you're talking about. There are certain things that people do that are obviously intentionally, they know that they know that they are gaslighting you and ignoring you, and they're not giving you the attention that you need, and that eventually will break down your confidence. And there are certain cases where they just don't know what to say. They don't know. And you have to test the waters. You have to be the one to initiate these conversations. Don't guess. If you have an idea, you want to start a business and you need the support, I always tell my mentees, you need to be very direct in communication. Go to your spouse or to your boyfriend or partner or parent or whoever you have that close bond to, and you really need their support in that moment, and tell them directly, I have this idea that I want to work on, and I really appreciate your support. Would you be able to support me? And I don't need anything from you. If you need something, you can request it, of course. Like, I need you, for example, if you have kids, I want you to take care of the kids from this time to this time, so I could take care of 1, 2, 3, 4. Would you be able to offer that? Would you be able to help me with that? And that would be how you start to build the support that you need from the person. So the more your partner or the people you need the support with are willing to work with you, that's a display of a healthy relationship, right? They just needed to understand better what are your needs, what you're trying to do, and then you decide together if that's something they could fulfill or not. And it becomes a negotiation, really. It's not It's not where you're being emotionally and psychologically abused to break you down because you have ambition or you have drive. And in many cases, you might find partners who don't necessarily agree with you on an idea that you're trying to pursue. And they're still going to be there and be like, you know, if you want to pursue this, I respect that. I don't necessarily agree with what you're trying to do, but I will be there for you. And that's also another way of displaying a healthy relational dynamic without being 100% in with you on the idea, but they're not, again, breaking you down or they're not pulling you back. They're just being honest about what they think and still being empathetic enough with you and supportive to what you're trying to do. So you can test the water with the people by being very direct. This is what I'm trying to do. This is the type of support that I need. Can you give me that? Can you help me with that? And if you can't give me that tangible thing that I need, whether that's your time or your involvement or a task that I want you to help me to accomplish, then would you be able to at least be supportive emotionally and morally while I go through my own struggles and my own experience of executing on my ideas and my plans. So those are the two ways. So you either involve the person directly, you ask them, you have a request and you want them to fulfill a certain need that you have, or you ask for their moral support, even if they don't necessarily have a direct involvement or they don't have a tangible contribution to your efforts or to your initiatives, if they could be there for you. And you will know immediately through that conversation if your partner is fit to be a supportive partner or not, because they're either going to tangibly contribute, whether they're with time or with compromises, working around your plans. If they're willing to work with you so you can accomplish what you want to accomplish, that's a positive sign. Or whether they don't necessarily agree with you, but they are willing to be there for you and cheer you on so you can accomplish what you need to accomplish. Those are the two positive things that you're looking for. If you don't get those two signals back, you have to be extremely careful, because down the line, if the person is right off the bat is telling you it's not about I disagree with you. No, they start to hammer you, they start to destroy you, they try to destroy your ideas, they try to break down your self-esteem, those are the things that you have to be careful for, because now you're entering the toxic territory, and down the line it will only get worse, especially if you're trying to build, because those toxic relational dynamics can literally have not only a huge toll, it's not only a distraction, but it's a destruction. So you have to be careful who you want to be surrounded with, especially if you're trying to build and move forward. You cannot be building with someone destructive.
Absolutely. It's not, it will never work. It will never mix.
No.
So let's say someone does their self-assess, they've assessed their situation, they realize it's toxic. What would you recommend in terms of action steps? Because people have to be careful about how, particularly if a relationship is abusive, because there's, kind of your toxic relationships, and then there's, relationships that are beyond toxic and they're just downright abusive. So how, what would you recommend in terms of how someone can take the action to actually separate? Because until you separate yourself from that toxic person, from that relationship, you're not going to be able to fully blossom into that entrepreneur, that successful entrepreneur that you want to be. So let's talk about action steps.
Sure. I think the most important thing to do, you assess your situation very realistically. And if you're not sure you have the capability of having the most accurate resolution or conclusion on that, talk to specialists, talk to therapists, talk to psychologists, speak with people who might have a much better understanding of what you're going through from a clinical perspective, and they can give you more directions If what you're dealing with is something you can work on and enhance through therapy or through coaching, or if you're dealing with a personality that there is no way it's going to evolve, like when you're dealing with someone who has a narcissistic personality disorder or borderline or other extreme types of sociopathy and psychopathy, that you literally can't do nothing about it as a partner, and you have to choose to get out of the situation, because those are extremely abusive situations, extremely toxic, extremely destructive. And in most cases, those people do not have the capacity to change. So it's not a matter of building healthier habits or working on childhood traumas through therapy and because they don't have the capacity to evolve, they don't have the capacity to self-reflect. So you have to really understand what you're dealing with. And I've been in that situation, so I can speak for myself. And toxic situations where the person has toxic traits that could be worked on through self-development, because we all have toxic traits. We just, if we are people who are highly self-aware and are constantly in self-development mode, you're always getting better. You're aware of the things that you do that you're not very proud of, or behaviors that you know you can change, and you start to working on becoming a better person through taking the action steps and taking full responsibility for who you are and who you want to be. But if you're someone who doesn't have the capacity, it becomes a lost cause. You're investing the time and energy in trying to work something that doesn't have the potential to be workable. So it will be good to understand the person you're dealing with, what you're dealing with. If it's something you can go to therapy and have coaching with professionals that can help both of you evolve in the relationship to have a healthier dynamic, great. If through that understanding and assessment, you know you are in a highly abusive situation, that's not gonna be better in any way, because you are working with a personality that doesn't necessarily evolve and grow in the same way that a normal human does. You have to really be determined to choose yourself over that situation. Most importantly, you have to ask yourself this one question: is the way I'm being treated right? Is that how I want to be treated? And that's what I want for my life. How does this make me feel? You have to self-reflect on those things, because those give you the answers. You don't need to be justifying and making excuses for people that treat you horribly. So you have to ask yourself, how does this make me feel? Is this how I want to be treated? If the answer is no, and if the answer is horrible, this makes me feel horrible. This makes me feel I'm losing passion for my life. This is taking life away from me. This is taking energy away from me. This is making me feel bad about myself. Those answers only you can answer. Is this right how this person is treating me? You know how you want to be treated. You know, if something you are receiving is making you feel any kind of negative emotion, you have the answer, and you got to choose. If you are someone who have self-respect and who have self-worth, you know how you want to be treated, and you will never ever allow someone to treat you in a certain way. And you will always choose your own dignity and your own self-respect and your own knowing your own value as human, regardless if you're a woman or a man, right? You have to decide, I deserve better. And this is not what I want for myself. So it's much simpler than what people think. Most people put so much focus on the other person, and they forget to think about, what do I want? How does this make me feel? How does this treatment and behavior make me feel? Is this what I want for me? How is this impacting me? And if we turn these questions inward, we'll find the right answers. We'll find all the right answers, and you'll find a way to move yourself out of bad situations much more quickly than people think that they are capable of, because a lot of people feel guilty and feel, no, but how am I going to do this? And I should try more. No, it's not about trying more or harder. It's about the truth. And when someone shows you who they are, you have to believe it. And we hear that all the time, but we don't always understand what it means in terms of applying that advice or that insight. It's much simpler than a lot of people think. Look at the truth, ask yourself basic questions. What do I want? Is this how I want to be treated? How does this make me feel? Simple questions. And through those introspective type of assessments, you can make faster decisions, and you are able to make more empowered decisions from a place of self-worth and from a place of self-respect. And you ensure that you start to move away from people that don't treat you the way you want to be treated, or make you feel negative emotions, or put you down rather than lift you up and be supportive to you. And you start to surround yourself with the people that will nurture you and will be supportive to you and will help you grow on your journey. And you'll be able to do the same for others as well. If that's your purpose in life, you'll know that.
And those are questions that you can ask, not just partners, but you can ask anyone.
Exactly.
Friendships, there's such things as toxic friendships. There's such things as toxic family relationships. So, those questions can be used across the board. And it's important for people to remember it's not anything that they have done wrong. Just because they end up in a situation, it doesn't make them a bad person. You just have to make the decision to get out.
Exactly.
And so as we move to kind of close out here, I want people to know where they can connect with you. You mentioned, mentees, that you have mentees. Like, what if people want to say, you know what, how do I reach out to Rania? How do they get a hold of you online?
Sure. I mean, the best way to connect with me is through my social media pages, and I am hoping we can also share those links.
We will, yeah.
So people can contact me or reach out to me, connect with me through my Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, also on LinkedIn if they like to. And eventually, there's also my website. If someone wants to contact me directly, if they're looking for coaching sessions, or they want to have someone to come in to an event as a professional speaker to present at their conferences or anything like that, or smaller events, they could submit through my website a detailed contact form, and my team will reach out and arrange for any kind of meeting that they're looking for, whether that's a coaching session or speaking engagement or anything like that.
So your social media page, let's speak it out in case anyone's just listening and they don't catch the video version. And then if you can tell them what your website is, so that way, if they're just listening and they don't have access to the show notes for the podcast, or they're not watching it on YouTube, this way they can find you that way.
Yes, my website is raniahote.com, which is first name, last name.com. On Facebook, they can find me with Rania Hotate official page. And on Instagram, it's Rania Hotate official public page. And on Twitter, it's my first name, Rania_Hotate. So those are the different usernames that they can find me through. And it's easy. Once you type my first and last name, it will be easy to find me on social media. It wouldn't be hard.
Excellent. And what are your last words to the listeners for today's episode?
My last words, especially for our listeners who are struggling to make decisions in their lives, if they are in toxic situations or toxic relationships, or they don't have the support system that they need, and they have great ambitions and great ideas, and they want to go into business and become successful entrepreneurs, I say you have to be very determined in terms of who you want to become as a person, have a very defined idea of who you want to be, who you want to become, and also have a clear idea of who are the people you want to be surrounded with, because business is all about relationships. Life is all about relationships. And especially if you are aiming to become an entrepreneur, your life will revolve around building networks of people and relationships that will be conducive to your growth at an individual level and also at a professional level. So you have to be determined to choose the right people and make sure you are always aware of who you are surrounded with, and be very strong about detaching and moving away and choosing yourself at any moment in time in any relationship, whether that is family or friendships or intimate relationships or business partnerships. You have to be strong enough at one point in that relationship. If you feel you are not being valued, you're not being respected, you are not being reciprocated, you are not being built up and supported, you have to be strong enough to move away and to detach and choose yourself and choose the right people in your life. And I can't emphasize this more, because our entire life is built around having healthy relationships if we want to have a good life and we want to thrive.
I couldn't have said those words better, Rania. It's been such a pleasure hanging out with you for this episode. I think I just want to thank you for providing so much knowledge and some great tips for my audience. And with that being said, that's a wrap for this episode. And join me in the next episode of the Boss Experience podcast. Take
Thank
care.
you so much, Michele. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be with you on the show. Thank you very much.